going to talk about finishing in our sit and knit. And by talk about, I mean, I'm going to do some finishing while we talk about this, and hopefully you can do some as well. If you want to go ahead and grab a project that you've just been putting off finishing, go for it. I have a couple of analogies that have really resonated with me when it comes to finishing. The first one was someone told me that we'd probably knit like we read. And I just have thought that was so insightful. I tend to be somebody who's reading a lot of books at the same time. I think right now my Goodreads book list says that I'm reading 13 books. Some of those have been abandoned. I have not touched or thought about them for a long time. A couple of them are 100% finished, but I haven't written a review of them, so they're just still sitting on my shelf. And this is basically exactly how I am with knitting. I like to have both a book to read and a project to knit that works for a variety of different situations. Do I need something light right before bed? Maybe I do. Do I need something that I can take on the go? Yes, definitely. Do I sometimes have a bigger project? Absolutely. So today I want to just tackle a couple of projects that are mostly done. I also mentioned this in a project review that I did. I had a headband that I think it was 90 or 99% done, literally just needed to weave in the ends. Maybe add the buttons. Either way, almost done. So today I have 3 projects. We'll see if I get any or all of them done today, but we'll talk about them and hopefully you'll learn something or at least have a few minutes to work on finishing a project of your own. The first thing that I'm going to work on finishing is this turtle here. I actually made this turtle first, the mommy turtle. This is a commissioned project a friend of mine asked me to do as a gift for a friend of his, and I just only had these very tails to take care of and didn't finish it, but partially because I just wasn't 100%, didn't love it 100%. So as a surprise, I made this little guy for him because when I showed him this one partway through, he was like, oh, I just want to keep it. So I thought, I know what I'm going to make him for Christmas. So this one I did 100% finish, and I like the way the head got put on better. So what I'm going to do is actually take this head off, reposition it, sew it back on, and then take care of the ends, which makes me a little bit glad that I didn't actually take this out because that will make it easier for me to take it off. So what I'm going to do is just kind of follow where my yarn goes. So I'm just going to take this tapestry needle and I'm going to kind of tug on this yarn until I can see where it's coming from. Put my tapestry needle underneath the yarn and pull the stitch out. So I won't make you sit and watch all of that, especially from afar. So I'll just kind of fast forward through all this and see you on the other side. There we go. The head is free. So the thing I realized when making this one is that, and what I kind of tried to do at the end here, is that the head actually should be attached to the shell. That wasn't clear to me in the pictures from the pattern, but when I finished this one, I did that and it looks so much better and rests better. Like when it's laying flat, the head is still a little bit up instead of down. The head was kind of like going into the table or whatever it was sitting on before. So now that that's all undone, I'm going to go ahead and connect this head directly to the shell part. I also think I found a better way to do it with the second one. I don't know if this happens to you, but definitely for me, when I'm doing a project a second time, There are so many things that are just easier that I learned. And it doesn't always have to be the exact same project, although that does make a big difference. Dropping the head there. Good thing it's attached to this needle. Okay, so I did also separate two of the little fins or legs, hands, a little bit more. So just making sure I am going to attach that head in between the ones that are separated a little bit more, even though that kind of got spun around. Just going to adjust until I feel, yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. So anyway, I learned things from doing this first one that I am going to now apply here when connecting this head. I know sometimes my students, when I'm talking to them about finishing, they want to know exactly where to put something or exactly what stitch to connect to what stitch. And that's not generally, most patterns don't include that level of detail, which I like. I want to be able to just kind of put the head on where I think it looks good. I like being able to kind of adjust even like expressions, right? I could have made a little bit more of a smirking turtle instead of a smiling turtle if I wanted to, just based on where I added the black yarn for the mouth. This is what I like to refer to as the art, not the science part of knitting, where you get to make choices about how you want something to be and really make it your own. So it's a totally unique finished project that's going to be different than anyone else's, even if they followed the exact same pattern. And I'm just taking care to check that the head doesn't get kind of twisted off center, if you will, or off what I want it to be. So if I check every once in a while, then I can keep the eyes and the mouth aligned the way that I want it to be. And one thing I learned doing this other turtle is actually that it really helped to go around twice. So I got the head kind of tacked down, and then I went around a second time to really make sure it wasn't going to fall off and that nothing was in a spot where I didn't want it to be. So here's my second go around. Also, in this case, I connected kind of the very middle of the back of the head, and now I'm going to attach a second row, which will make the head, instead of it coming kind of to a point, it will smush more of the head up against the shell and flatten out the head just a little bit. And this is, again, where the art versus the science part of it is, you get to kind of experiment with. The pattern just said, sew the head on, and had a picture of what hers looked like, but gives a lot of latitude for you to do whatever you want. This is actually a crochet project, not a knitting project, but I will link, I know most of the videos that I make are about knitting, but this is a crochet project. So I will link this pattern in the description below. It's a free pattern, so if you are interested, you can definitely check it out. Make one yourself. They are really cute. All right. So if I give a little tug on this head, it is not going anywhere. It's nice and cemented. I mean, I guess if I really tried hard to find it and realign it, I could, but unless someone's really trying to take it off, that's not going anywhere. So now I'm going to actually just finish it. And one of the things I love about little stuffed animals is that you don't have to do a lot of weaving. I'm just going to put this needle in very close, right next to the stitch that I just finished, and then bring it out way over here on the other end of the shell. Make sure that gets pulled all the way in. And then what I like to do, I like to pull on it just a little bit while I cut it, and then it'll suck itself back in because it's all that tension. You're pulling a little bit that's normally inside out, and then when you cut it, it goes back in. So you can't even see any evidence that there was a green string brought through and put in there. So just gonna do that same thing with each of these other ones here. In close, out on the other side. Whoops. Make sure it gets pulled all the way in. Pull it a little bit tight. Cut. Sucked right in. All right, 3 more. Done. 100%. So here, 15 minutes later, I am done with this turtle. Okay, so let's go ahead and transition to my second project. But first, aren't those so cute? Mommy and baby. Love it. Love it. We'll put them right up here. Project number 2. So this, I was using these giant needles, which actually, were these? I think these might have been the first needles I ever bought. But I used them to help me do the handles, the handles for this bag. So this is a market bag that I made from the book Knitting 24/7. By Veronique Avery. I did a book review on it. You can follow the link above to check out more about the whole book and the other projects that I wanted to do from it. But this is actually, I'm planning on stopping at the grocery store today. So if I can get this done right now, then this afternoon, I can use it. The only thing I have left, I did the whole bag and I did the handles, and I just need to Kitchener them together. I know Kitchener is not everyone's favorite thing to do, but I have come to really like it. I had a couple of students that were doing a bunch of projects with it, and I just became very comfortable and familiar with it. And I was like, man, this is not so bad. Oh, and this is actually connected still to the rest of the yarn. I was wondering why that tail was so long. Still have some yarn left. So I'm going to leave that one connected and use the other side for this Kitchener stitch. Okay. There are lots of tutorials on Kitchener. I'm not going to necessarily teach you how to do the Kitchener, but I'm just going to go ahead and do it. But if you want a Kitchener tutorial, let me know in the comments below and I can work on that. Let's see. Yeah, at least 3 times as long, so that should be plenty. And the reason that I'm doing this, I could very easily use the side that has still the yarn connected to it, the rest of the skein. But if I use the other tail to do this, then I'll have more of the skein left over because I already used this yarn. This one's already cut off. So that's why I made that choice. The way I did. All right. Wait a second. I did that backwards. I think this is the other reason why finishing often just gets left behind for me, because it's the most brain, it requires the most brain power of all the parts that we do, at least for me. So what else I realized? Oh well, that is okay. All right. Still not, I do like Kitchener a lot. I'm not quite skilled enough to talk while doing it, apparently. Which means I could probably also fast forward through this part. Or maybe I won't. Let's see. I could. There was another book that I read. I'll add the title because I'm forgetting it right now. So there's another book that I read that talked about using a mantra for the Kitchener, and I have really liked that. Mine is different than hers, I think. Maybe it's not. Maybe I ended up using the same one as her. Yeah, but it's helped me. Knit off, purl on, purl off, knit on. And there's also a lady in one of my knitting groups, knit off, who doesn't like mantras. Purl on, purl off. And she likes to just think about the stitches, knit on. Basically, you're just knitting the stitch again, or you're working the stitch. So you don't have to have a mantra here in order to actually do the Kitchener stitch. And that's true. I definitely, Very Pink Knits has one that she talks about like that. She actually likes to take the stitches off and have them just sitting as live stitches while she does the Kitchener. I'll put that link in the description too, but that can be a little bit scary depending on how comfortable you are and what type of yarn you've used, how likely the stitches are to slide. But for most yarn, that's actually less of a problem than we fear it is. Purl off, knit on. And actually, even though I don't do it that way, that really did help me kind of visualize it. Knit off, purl on, purl off, knit on. And I guess part of the reason why this mantra that I'm using works for me is exactly because of that it helps me keep track. Knit off, purl on, purl off, knit on. It helps me just keep track of where I am. When you're slipping a stitch off, you're slipping it off in relation to the way that stitch is being worked. So you're working on a knit stitch on your needle that's closer to you and a purl stitch on the needle that's further away from you. And so knitting it on and off, that just made a lot of sense to me. Okay, there we go. That first one Kitchenered together, a nice connected. Why can't I think of this word twice today? Oh, the handle for the bag. Words. Wow. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and cut this off now that I definitely did that and it worked, and leave myself a tail to weave in there, and then just have this yarn, a little bit of 100% linen yarn I can use for something else. All right, so this other one I put aside on a stitch holder here, but it is definitely easier to do the Kitchener off of well, I don't think I could do it off of this particular stitch holder because one side, you need access to both sides. So just gonna slip them over onto this circular needle here. Again, back to part of the reason why finishing just takes time, and there's extra little steps, or you need a tool that you may not always have with you in that moment, etc. So that can be a deterrent. All right. Or the brain power. Keeping with that analogy of knitting projects like we read books, I always want to be reading more nonfiction than I actually do, because often reading is kind of a downtime activity for me, and I don't have the mental bandwidth to read a lot of the nonfiction that I want to read when I have time to read. And sometimes I don't have the mental bandwidth to do finishing when I have time to do knitting, especially my own personal knitting. I guess that's why, like, those turtles, in some ways they were easier for me to finish because someone's paying me to do it and I have to get it done in order to give it back to him. So, all right, so just double checking here that I have the same number of stitches. Okay, and get started here. Okay. Off, purl And I will say that the other thing that I have found, I remember the first time I did Kitchener on a pair of socks, probably the first pair I ever knit. I made them very tight, and that did not work out very well. So just, every couple of stitches kind of checking the tightness. That is a good idea. So, especially since this isn't a tutorial for it and we already did this on the other side, I'll just zip through and meet you on the other side. Okay, there we go. And we can just tighten up that tail. I guess I could have left that threaded. There we go. Handles done. And this bag I can use when I go to the grocery store today. I guess I will do the final thing of actually weaving in the ends. Not get this one to 99%. Let's get it to 100. I guess it's also back to the brain work needed to do finishing. It tends to be the thing that designers give the least amount of detail about, which I think makes sense. But especially for new knitters, this can be a bit distressing. If you want someone to be telling you what to do and how to do it, and you know what? I normally do not, but I am going to do that here. This is my first time working with 100% linen, and I did really like it, but I'm not sure that how well it will stay. It's not like wool. It's not going to kind of like felt or stick together. So I'm just gonna, and also this isn't something I'm gonna wear. That is one of the reasons I don't like knots, because I don't want to have to feel them. I guess technically this will be resting on my shoulder, but over clothing, so I'm not worried about that. So I'm gonna do it. And then I will weave in this end a bit still. And I'm going to do that right here along the Kitchener edge on the inside. Hide that in. And call it a day. But what I was saying here, that if you're wanting to be told all the steps, then finishing can be a little overwhelming because it doesn't usually tell you all the steps. Now here's another question or tip that I have. What do you do with your little pieces of cut off yarn? Do you save them? Do you have anything specific you use them for? I got an idea to use them for putting inside stuffed animals, like that turtle I just finished that we went through together. And that has actually been a really great way to use them. And I do like to use them for making some yarn embroidery on things. So if I'm making a little face on something, in fact, the black mouth on the turtle was done that way, using some leftover yarn from a different project that I did. But I would love any other tips and suggestions that you have for me and for each other about ways to use those scraps of yarn. Let's do this other handle here. Get both of those tails woven in. this one, it didn't end up quite as, like some of the stitches on this other side stick out a little bit. So I'm just going to kind of join them together a bit. So that they're the way I want them to be. All right, that looks a little better to me, a little more straight. There is still this one little guy poking out here, so I might just bring my yarn through there one more time and kind of pull that to the back or the inside of the handle while I weave it in. Also, if you did work on finishing a project while watching or sitting here with me finishing my projects, you should share that in the comments below. What did you get completely done, or what did you at least make another step forward on during our finishing time today? Celebrate each other's wins. Sometimes it's nice just to have a little company motivation while we are working on a project. Thanks for giving me this excuse to make this video and get a couple of projects taken care of. Take my stitch marker off here. I used that, whoa, don't get caught. I used that stitch marker to help me with measuring. It told me to do something for a certain number of inches after starting the handle part. I love stitch markers, I really do. I find them to be so useful. And speaking of harder brain parts, I love using stitch markers to minimize the amount of thinking that has to be done on something. Okay, so this one I don't have another tail to make a knot with, so I'm just going to follow, basically I'm doing a duplicate stitch here, following exactly across this row. And then at some point I will try doubling back to kind of make a little knot on itself. Oops, hold that one too tight. Okay. Oh, I came unthreaded there. Thread the needle up again. Go back once. Trim that. And the very last one here at the bottom, which actually, this one I think I might leave. I know that makes it not 100%, but the reason I'm going to do it, so this project starts with a hole. And I'm not sure how I feel about it. So I think I'm going to just bring this strand inside. If I can grab it, there we go. So I'm just going to bring that to the inside, and then I'll shop with it today and see how I feel. So if I don't like that hole, then I can just stop it up and then weave in that end. And if it's fine, if nothing gets stuck down there, if I think that that'll be okay, then I will just weave it in how it is. But there is the completed bag. Very exciting. Turns out I only made it through 2 of my 3 projects to finish in our sit and knit today. I'll come back to that other one hopefully soon, or it'll just keep sitting in my bag as a UFO for a while longer. We will see. But thanks for joining. I hope you enjoyed sitting and knitting today, whether you did your own project or just spent some time with me on my projects. Again, if you did do a project while watching the video with us, let us know below so everyone can celebrate your win of what you got finished or moved one step closer to finishing. I hope you enjoy knitting, whether it's moving forward on a project or finishing something up or starting something new and letting some projects sit for a while. Either way, happy knitting!